we've looked at Chip Roy. We've looked at at Trump running in the next little bit. And certainly we're going to see, some real changes. And these changes, are, they might be a mystery to you and me. You're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide, by the way. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, because I go through all of this shit with you. I'm there. I'm your little sidecar of joy. But I always wonder, does anybody have the inside track on what the fuck the plan is? I'm excited. Somebody's going to break it down to it. I've been watching Kevin McCarthy talk about this. I saw the whole Sean Hannity interview. I've seen House Republicans go out on the floor one after the other and blather like Chip Roy did. And I'm still going, I don't know what the fuck these guys are going to do during this Congress. I have no idea, other than, investigations and yammering on a committee, but anybody can fucking do that if it doesn't have to amount to anything. Who gives a shit? But here comes the mess to tell us what's going on, and blissfully, this video is only 5 minutes and change. Just under 6 minutes long, so we won't have to fuck. Some of these 13-minute videos are fucking tooth pulls. This one's short, but it'll answer so many questions. I don't know. Do you know? I don't even know. I hope the maggots and, amongst the Marge Trader Green and the Freedom Caucasians, I hope they're watching so they know what they're supposed to do. I don't know. Let's find out. The House GOP's agenda for the next 2 years. Let's see it. I want to know. You want to know. Or do we?
Skirmish erupted between...
Oh, wait. Hold on. By the way. Dip, dip, dip. I had to set this ahead. Listen at the very beginning. The sound at the very beginning.
When the...
What the fuck is with the bell? There's like a...
When the...
Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee.
Skirmish erupted.
It's like it's a fucking... He thinks he's in a Western where everyone wears golf shirts or garanimals. That's a garanimal. There's a fucking whale on his shirt. He is wearing garanimals. So say I.
Between Kevin McCarthy and his supporters and the 20 or so House dissidents.
Dissidents. The dissidents here. No, it wasn't. Fucking Rogers from Florida got, pissed and almost had his wig jerked at one point. The biggest fights have been between Marge and Lauren Boebert, where Boebert told Marge to get the fuck out of my face during that little exchange. And later in the bathroom, they had a big fight. And Debbie Dingle witnessed the whole thing, but refuses to talk about it because what happens in the ladies' room stays in the ladies' room. I respect that.
Almost all of them drawn from the House Freedom Caucus.
All of them were. And by the way, not the entirety of the Freedom Caucus.
When...
Freedom Caucus, just so you know, Freedom Caucus is not just 20 members. There's 30 some odd, or maybe even 40.
All of that was occurring. It was acrimonious. It was somewhat bitter.
Somewhat, but bittersweet.
And it was being, of course, amplified in the media, and there was...
Yeah. And why couldn't they just let it alone? I mean, so what if they almost came to blows? So what if they were shit-talking each other in front of C-SPAN cameras and you could actually see swear words coming out of their mouths towards their own party? That's not news. That's just gossip. That's the kind of shit Harry and Meghan have to deal with. It's just wrong.
Some people, even some Republicans, were like, "This is no way to do business. This discussion should occur behind closed doors. Why are we holding up the important business of Congress?"
Yes, all ridiculous statements. You can tell by his voice and face that he's making, like, who the fuck are these guys that think Mr. Fancy Pants?
And of course, people like Dan Crenshaw, who wanted McCarthy to be, you could almost say, accepted by group acclaim. We don't even need to have a vote. Let's just all agree he's our great leader. Crenshaw was, again, suggesting that there's important business for the House to do, and that business would be held up.
Which was true.
By this kind of an unconscionable delay.
But another kind of unconscionable delay would be lovely.
Now know that the delay was short. What?
Yeah, it was 5 days. And it resulted in rules that set up him being forced to put out like bills right away that go nowhere again, prioritizing all these bills, eliminating the IRS and the DOD and getting rid of the IRS 87,000 agents, all this shit that as bills, like have a vote on them that will win on a mild like partisan number. So fucking what? They won't pass in the Senate, and they certainly won't come back. And it's not even because the Democrats will shut it down. Like Republican senators aren't behind this shit. It's garbage. So they held out this thing, embarrassed the shit out of him, had open arguments where they're cussing each other. They have violent outbursts on the fucking floor for 5 fucking days over a knob like Kevin McCarthy, so that they can force him to put forward a bunch of bills that aren't going anywhere, put people on committees that don't have the seniority to be on there and have no business being around those things, especially like DHS and other things. And then, I guess in general, that argument about that everybody has to be there when people make arguments on the floor, which we now know is total bullshit. They're not living up to it. And also the 72-hour rule, right? Oh my God, 72 hours. A bill, if we're going to vote on it, it has to be available for 72 hours. And then as soon as they pass the rules package, they vote on like 4 fucking bills that are introduced at that second. Like they set the rule and then they broke the rule immediately.
4 days, big deal. As if
it wasn't the time, it was what happened during that time.
to say that, this is something that
But it was also the time.
couldn't wait because things had to be done. No. 4 days later, we look at the result and we realize the result is much, much better.
Oh, it's so good because dead bills.
The reason it's that this ploy worked, and it was a
All right, let's hear why the ploy worked.
risky ploy because, of course,
The old risky ploy, trying this, the old risky ploy.
things would have gone very bad had
yes.
McCarthy become so desperate that he started courting the votes of Democrats. This is something in the back of my mind I was worried about.
Yeah, but I mean, honest to God, though, in the back of your mind, like the rest of your mind, it's relatively uncrowded. I mean, it was a lonely thought under a street light, wondering when a car would come by on a dead-end road.
I didn't think it was likely, but nevertheless, it was possible.
Great. And by the way, I agree. Everyone watching this, I agree. If the entire result of those 4 days was just weird, anxious moments for Dinesh D'Souza, cool. If there were like multiple days where he was like flop sweating, yeah, that was good enough. All that shit was worth it. Even if it was just to make him and Debbie a little coarse with each other over toast.
But fortunately, it didn't happen.
Yes, fortunately, it was just a bunch of cussing and almost punching each other.
And the two sides have kind of come together.
The two sides of the same party.
McCarthy has made a whole bunch of concessions.
He has made a hole, that's true.
And the key point is that concessions aren't minor. They aren't just procedural.
Yeah, no, like they're not even following them.
They changed the whole way of doing business in the
The whole way, everything. Yeah. Now they flip coins. It's great.
House. And I talked about
They have a dartboard to pick whose amendments get on there.
that yesterday. They've resulted in important things like a new church committee to investigate sort of deep state abuse. That's
Oh, super exciting. Not a new church committee that isn't a church committee to investigate the deep state. How can that not be successful?
going to be critically important. That's
Oh, it's good. It's great. My question is, how do you subpoena the deep state? Anybody know? Where do you mail the subpoena? How do you serve them? Do you just stand in parking lots looking for puffs of smoke coming from behind pillars?
something that we simply had to do.
Yeah, you gotta. You can't. I mean, sure, bills and fucking material worth for the American people. We have to do this. Otherwise, our insane constituents will string us up and stand on our lawn with torches and shotguns.
And I think it would be a real black mark against the GOP if it had left that out.
Oh, yeah. They hadn't put the committee where they can do some PR stunts. It's going to be, yeah.
But I want to give you some sense of the comprehensiveness of the McCarthy agenda. This is not
Right.
McCarthy's own agenda.
No, of course not. I call it McCarthy's agenda, but it's not really his agenda. They made him. And he wouldn't have done it if they hadn't made him, even though most of it he agreed to, like, in August. But obviously, it's not his agenda because he's a rhino fuck, and I hate his guts. But he's running everything now, so it couldn't be better.
This is the agenda that he agreed to with the...
Oh, yeah. So, just so you know, anything you agree to is not your agenda for legal purposes. Sock that away, folks, for yourself.
You know, kind of a gun to his head.
Oh, God, if I got to his head. Which is exactly how you want things run. By a small, like, loud constituency that is out of touch with the National Republican Party. Good times. What could possibly go wrong?
In other words, what the House Freedom
in other words, a gun to his head.
Caucus guys realize is, in a way, we have more power than McCarthy. True, he has 200 votes and we have 20. And
True. We're 10% of the electorate, and we want dominance over everyone else because our ideas are wholly unpopular. But since it's such a squeak minority or a squeak majority, we basically have them over a barrel. So fuck them. We can just control them, not because we earned it, but because we fucked the Republican Party into fewer gains during a contest they should have run away with.
And this is the point that kind of Hannity never got. Hannity's like, well...
Oh, fucking Hannity, right? I mean, Demes doesn't have to tell you.
To Lauren Boebert, well, why don't you...
What are you doing, Lord Boebert?
Concede. You're asking McCarthy to step down, but he has 200, you have 20. But the point is, McCarthy needed to get almost all the Republicans to become Speaker. And so...
that... He didn't want him. He had to. Oh. I was wondering why that went on for days and days and why he gave away I was like, does he even need these votes? And apparently, it turns out he does. And why is that? Because of the narrow majority. Which, instead of recognizing that the extremists in the party actually contributed to the narrowing of the majority, they blame the majority, including people, by the way, who won in gerrymandered districts for running as kind of, relatively middle of the road. George Santos, as an exception. But, look, the point is, if you have leverage, whether you've earned it or not, use it, baby.
So they realized, the Boebert and others, that McCarthy needed them more than they needed him.
Yeah. Well, I guess at a certain point, they don't give a shit if the government works at all. So they don't need anybody to be Speaker. By the way, this is the same party. These are members of the same party.
And so they cut a deal that's a very favorable deal. And
it's fantastic.
Let's look at some of the things that McCarthy has agreed to.
Let's look at them. Let's see it. All right. We got 3 minutes left. You guys ready? Get your pencils out.
In addition to the committee to investigate the deep state.
Yeah, just deep state. You had me at deep state. Yeah, if we could just get to... Is Hillary at Gitmo or not? You answer that question, I'm solid.
In addition to the new way of doing business in the House. And by the way, in addition...
Yeah, the new way of doing business, which is, I guess, trading committee seats for votes. Oh, wait a minute, that's not new. That's been around for fucking ever. It's downright, what's the word I'm looking for? Swampy.
To the repeal of the IRS agents. Now, by itself, that...
The repeal of the IRS agents, which... Can happen, didn't happen. They passed a bill to do it, but it's not going anywhere. The fuck are they talking about?
It doesn't defund the agents, but it does put some legislative power behind that idea.
All right, yeah. Run that by me again, fucko. Listen to this.
Put some legislative agents. Now, by business in the House. And by the way, in addition to the repeal of the IRS agents. Now, by itself, that doesn't defund the agents, but it does put some legislative power behind that idea, an idea that I think will live to fight another day.
Okay, did you get that? Yeah. Yeah, that asshole traded away committee seats and present votes and all this shit for a bill that would go nowhere and didn't actually do what it said it did. Which, by the way, they went out, Boebert, McCarthy, everybody went out and said, we did that. We passed a bill to pull back the funding. It didn't do that. It can't do that. It doesn't. There is no situation where any party, much less a minority of one party, has line item veto over budgets that have already fucking passed. It's goofy. But they literally stand there and he said, McCarthy is specifically, we did that right away. No, they didn't. They voted on it. Who gives a fuck?
McCarthy agreed that a single congressperson acting on a Jeffersonian motion can vote to remove the speaker. That
really? What's the Jeffersonian motion? Do they have to stand with their legs together in like knickers and a white wig with their hand on a podium like this with a quill in their hand and go, what's the Jeffersonian motion? I'm not quite sure. I'm just going by the statues I've seen.
That's new.
It is new. It's really actually old. It was around for a long time, and then everybody was like, that's kind of fucking dumb. Especially when we have lunatics here.
Mentioned the
Maybe, I don't know, consensus of more than one fucking member of 500 should be necessary.
Church-style committee.
But honest to God, I don't fucking care. And it won't survive into the next Democratic House because it's nuts.
Term limit.
Yes, it's like Captain Morgan. Yes, that's the Jeffersonian motion. It's just you have to strike a Captain Morgan on the House floor.
Limits are going to be put up for a vote. Again, congressmen generally don't like term limits. You can kind of see here the view of the Republican establishment. We'd like to be congressmen as long as we can. If we stop being congressmen, we want to be running for the Senate. But we don't really want to go back to normal life where we have to get up at 8 a.m, shave, do a normal day's work.
The fuck are you talking about? What is it? How does he think, like, do they think they just, like, don't get up and shower in the morning? They fucking slack around. Who do they think they are? Trump? With, like, executive time till 11 a.m.?
So they don't like term limits, but term
fucking, and by the way, another bill that's going fucking nowhere. Next.
Limits is on the agenda. Single subject bills, no omnibus bills that just have 400 things in them.
No, those are different. Like different parts of the budget versus an omnibus that covers all the areas is different than single subject bills and not amending stuff to bills that are riders onto the bills, which, by the way, is something, quite frankly, that Republicans use a lot more. And when Democrats do it, they'll get angry because they put riders on stuff that are must pass for Republicans with their own constituents, but not on must pass bills overall.
Where you don't even have time to read it and all kinds.
And by the way, again, you have time to fucking read it. Secondly, they said 72 hours and they voted on shit right after the rules. There wasn't 72
kinds of
fucking
giveaways
hours.
And earmarks are thrown in there. The Texas border plan is going to be put before Congress. And this is, by the way,
another dead bill. Honest to fucking God. This reminds me of people who are like the force the vote crowd, who go, at least we make them say it, whatever, which is, what are these assholes ultimately taking home with them? What are they taking back to their constituents? Failure. What do you tell? Yeah, we promised you we'd have a vote on repealing the funding for 87,000 IRS agents. We promised we'd have a vote for you on the Texas plan. We promised we'd have a vote on it. They all failed, and even if they'd have passed, they wouldn't make it all the way to the Senate and then back here, and it would never happen or whatever. But we did have the vote, and don't you feel better? What? Your electrical grid is fucked. That was not on the list of things we were going to have a vote about, actually. And what? Floodwaters. I did not hear about that. I'm sorry, I was busy setting up a Hunter Biden laptop committee to go over the shit that's readily available on the internet but inadmissible in any court of law. Is Wednesday good for you? Because I get up in the morning and I just stay in bed till about 1, and then I don't even shave most days. Um, I mean, it's being a congressperson or whatever.
An effort to create a full physical border infrastructure.
An effort to create a full physical border infrastructure. Where does the money come for a border wall that covers the entire southern border of the United States? Because there's a dude in Florida they can call if they want an earful about how Mexico won't pay for it.
Change.
Also, by the way, this is Chip Roy's group who said this. Where the fuck does that money come from?
Border enforcement policies, enforce our laws in the interior, which is to say to go after lawbreakers who are roaming free among us. And
Because what? The CBP and ICE don't do that? They just see somebody like, that guy's stabbing someone. Don't bother him. He's not a citizen. Just let it happen.
And finally, target cartels and criminal organizations. Biden.
What? When? What? Oh, all right. That's it. Targeting criminal organizations, and I certainly hope we don't defund the FBI then.
Border policy a complete disaster.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, to some degree, I agree. Leaving Title 42 in place and artificially increasing the number of crossings to make it look like millions of people are crossing when it's the same 100,000 over and over again.
It looks like the House is at the very least going to be making some genuine effort.
At the very least, making some genuine effort. Well, House Republicans, I'd like to remind you to lift with your knees. That's right. You want to get a partner. There's no shame. It's heavy, and you want to lift with your knees. Some semblance of genuine effort. Oh, it's so good. At least they're going to try to put forward something that looks like it's actually something, even though it's nothing, because it takes a lot of work to make nothing look like something, and they're working very hard at that. They're not working smart, but fuck you.
To challenge all this. COVID mandates will be ended, as well as all funding for them, including...
They literally, what COVID mandates? By the way, all the school ones and business ones, business ones they can't control. School ones, it's just added to the regular inoculation that you have to get for the rest of shit. And these people, only people who balk at that are the same people who don't want to get fucking measles and polio vaccines.
So-called emergency funding.
Including so-called emergency funding, because who in the fuck thinks that COVID is a fucking emergency? I mean, what in the world would make you think that COVID in any way is, of all the things in the world that's going on right now, COVID itself is, it's not a problem. There you go. Hold on. There you go. COVID. There you go. There's your cases. Look at that. 2 million cases. China COVID deaths expected to hit $36,000. Sorry. Here you go. Look at this. China's COVID deaths expected to surge to 36,000 a day over Lunar New Year. That's next week. Next week in China, where they don't have a functioning vaccine, 36,000 Chinese people a fucking day. Airfinity boosts China's expected death rate by 11,000 a day. Findings suggest a significant health burden in the next fortnight, the next 2 weeks. China's likely to see 36,000 COVID deaths a day during the Lunar New Year holidays. That's a 2-week period, by the way, making one of the most deadly periods of the pandemic, according to an updated analysis of the largest outbreak that the world has ever experienced. And by the way, you think that number, and by the way, they only count people who die directly of COVID-related pneumonia. If there's anything else going on, and again, these are the same people who are like, if you had cancer when you were hit by a car, then the car is not to blame. The drunk driver is not to blame because you were going to die of the cancer anyways. That's their feeling about COVID in general. A lot of right-wingers and the Chinese government. Same fucking thing. Revised figures from the independent forecasting firm Airfinity added 11,000 deaths a day to its December 29th estimate, a jump that shows the breathtaking pace of the outbreak and the lack of clear information about how it's spreading in the world's most populous nation, allegedly world's most populous nation. The update is based on data from China's regional provinces combined with rates seen in other COVID-0 countries after they first lifted restrictions, the London-based research firm said. China will likely experience a longer, more severe COVID wave. That was the other thing. A lot of these people thought this would be fucking over, that it would peak right now, and it would be on the fade. I don't know where the fuck people thought this. Like, I could not understand the logic in any of this. That it would peak this week, and then as Lunar New Year came, it would actually start going down, which is the exact opposite of logically that it would have. Like, of course, it's going to get a double spike. Even if it was on the way down, the number of cases spreading through everybody interacting and everybody going home and taking it home with them is, of course, going to drive the number up through the fucking roof. Like, literally, people were saying that, like, by mid-January, it's going to be the peak, and then it'll go down for... I don't even know how's your brain function? China will likely experience one longer, more severe COVID wave rather than peaks and valleys as the traditional festival marked by millions of people returning home to reunite with their families fuels high levels of virus transmission, according to the predictive health analytics company that's been tracking the pandemic. Our forecast estimates a significant burden on China's healthcare system for the next fortnight, said Matt Lindley, Airfinity's analytics director. It's likely that many treatable patients could die due to overcrowded hospitals and lack of care. And by the way, I talked about this at the beginning of fucking lockdown. Remember in the fall of 2020, those of you that have been with the show for any length of time will remember us watching this shit. And as someone who was just in China months before, this whole story of they're building hospitals. Oh my God, China's building hospitals so quickly. It's amazing. And they weren't building hospitals. They're fucking prisons. They're basically dying quarters. They put you in there. They shove food under the door. If you survive on your own, they will let you out maybe in 10 days. But most of the people they put in there were symptomatic and in bad shape and ended up dying. And then they just rolled them over, wrapped them up in fucking plastic and buried them. It's horrifying. There is no fucking way that China has lost fewer than 17 million people since 2020 to COVID. Minimum. And because even in the beginning of it, this is pre-Delta, when they were like, we're opened up because zero COVID won, and America and all these other places, they're fucking around and finding out. China was having parties and giving the finger to the Western world because we got past it because of our zero COVID policy. And then they had to shut down multiple times again. Remember they had like festivals and all that kind of shit that they were showing? Those fucking people died. It's 20 million cell phones went offline in 2020. Chinese people pay for everything with their fucking phones. They use like Weibo and WeChat. They use WeChat Pay to pay for food and stuff. There's little QR codes at little kiosks or any fucking guy with a cart. You can pay with it. You don't need cash. You just pay for everything that way. And that phone number is your fucking life. It's like passports or driver's license just evaporating. 20 million phones in 1 year went offline. Now, did some people dump their shit and move back home and didn't contact anybody or didn't want the government to know where they were so they wouldn't get caught in a lockdown? Absolutely. That's about a quarter of those fucking people. So 15 million of those people, where the fuck are they? I'll tell you where they are. They're under 3 feet of dirt, most of them. Tragic era in Sino history, no question. CSL. I mean, it's fucking heartbreaking. And it's all a lie. Anybody who's like, 4,000 fucking people in a country with 1.4 billion, are you out of your fucking mind? And now it's just going to get worse. 36,000 fucking people a day. Meanwhile, this Dinesh is in soundly in the China's going to eat our lunch crowd. Still.
A lot of times, by and large, the Biden administration is kind of like, ask and you shall receive. It's an emergency. We need to have this allocation of additional money. And the House GOP answer now, no.
They're honest to God. There's any funding for COVID stuff, but for another huge outbreak that, by the way, Republicans would be fucking straight in line with in a lot of these districts. On the down low, by the way, they would cut deals and vote yes and then just run out of the fucking room because, and the Freedom Caucus would vote no, but they'd be outvoted by the people in their caucus just because that would make, look, I can't vote yes for this and get reelected. You're in a purple district. You can you vote yes for me and I'll owe you later? There's going to be those kind of it's like the Republicans, the Freedom Caucus are like buying people's normal votes in the regular Republican House caucus like they're carbon credits.
Budget bills don't automatically defer to a kind of extension of the debt ceiling. In other words, spend as much as you want. If we don't have the money, we don't have the guts to raise taxes to get it.
Okay, asshole. No. Democrats have the guts to raise taxes. This is the same shit Chip Roy was saying. And when he says we don't have the guts to raise taxes, he means Republicans. Specifically.
We'll just raise the debt ceiling. No, there are a whole bunch of Republican congressmen now that want to put a rein on spending. Look, the United States is...
Again, if you want to put a rein on spending, put it on the next one. Put forward your budget that says, because of this budget, we won't have to raise the debt ceiling. And we're working hand in glove with everybody else. And this is the thing. We have the votes to pass this. Holding the debt ceiling hostage is not that. That is just shit that was passed before. Same thing like in the first year of the Biden administration. And quite frankly, in the second year, a lot of the carryover from it, from all the expenditures made during Trump. $7 trillion added to the national debt during Trump's years. So, and by the way, a large portion of it to patch holes in the economy because of COVID, again, which is like the money printer go burr fuckers can just piss off.
It's a very rich country. We can spend a lot of money, but there is a limit.
What is it? What's the limit? Because what's Trump's limit? What is it? What's his GDP to debt ratio? What do you think? Anybody got a guess that his GDP to profit ratio, his profit to debt ratio for the Trump organization since 1992, when he essentially took the entire thing over from his debt? What do you think? Servicing debt and having debt versus how much profit he gets. What do you think? 3,000%? What's the debt payment for the actual profits? If you're going to talk about GDP versus national debt, and like it's a crisis, we're at 126% or something like that. Most households are at like 150% because your house and your mortgage and all that stuff, that's a liability. You might feel like it's an asset, but until it's paid off or it makes more money so that it's worth more than your down payment. And by the way, the housing market's going down next year. The rental market is going to crash. There's going to be all this wailing and gnashing of teeth from investors in the real estate market. Person to person, it's not going to fuck you up at all. If you're going to stay in your house for a few years, it won't matter at all. They'll be in a fucking panic and yammering about shit. But what do you think Trump's profit to debt ratio is? I'm guessing it's at least in the 3,000%. At least. Because and again, the debt ceiling argument, did any of these people think it was stupid for Trump to like refinance all of his debt with whoever would give him a better rate all the time and squeeze it out and never pay it off?
Because the fastest way to become a poor country is to keep...
By next year, do you mean 2024 or do you mean 2020? You mean me or him? Support.
Keep outspending your means.
Wait, George Santos drag queen photos are now emerging on Twitter? Get out. All right, sidebar, Mr. President, if I may. Chairman, come on now. Come on. And watch this. Be the fucking thing. It's got to be. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Let's see. This should be fairly Santos drag. Photos. Brazilian drag queen who was friends with George Santos when he lived near Rio. There he is. Said everyone knew him as Anthony, never George. Yeah, Anthony DeVolder. Or by his drag name, Kitara. Confirms this is a photo from 2008 drag show at Ikarai Beach. Oh dear. Ran as a far-right Canada. Drag is beautiful. Hypocrisy, anti-drag, anti-trans, bigotry or not. Hold on. George Santos under scrutiny. Ask him about Kitara Ravash, his drag name and pageant queen. There he is again. And is that him here? Yeah. Is that supposed to be him early on? That looks... A Republican drag queen elected to... Oh, come on. All right. Maybe he had... he has so many, filtered pictures, it's hard to tell which ones are real and which ones he would... that looks like something he would post anyways with an old filter on a phone. Report, George Santos performed in drag in Brazil. Okay. Is this other picture? Yeah, that's the picture of him. There you go. Again, it's honest, we don't have a problem with drag. The problem we have is this shit. His weird, picture of him as the Nazi with the burned palm in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, what shall we talk about? Yeah, well, by the way, there is a difference between drag and gag drag. This is gag drag, not only because it makes you gag, but because, whether he enjoyed it or not is immaterial. Yep, so there you go. Has he responded? Latest. George Santos, support of anti-LGBTQ, participated in drag shows and went by the name Kitara in Brazil. How many names does this motherfucker have? Liz Cheney's replacement, joining the gas stove culture where she looks like George Santos in drag. There's a case there. Yeah, this. Hold on, I have to. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Santos used Jewish name. Yeah, this is fucking amazing. Can I just do this real quick while we're on the Santos tip for 1 second? Santos used a fake Jewish last name to raise money on a GoFundMe page. The name was, where is it? Who lived in Santos told Answer Tuesday Santos used several aliases during their time as roommates. Maury Parker said he primarily knew Santos, who was listed his name as George Anthony DeVolder Santos, as Anthony DeVolder. But the former roommate said Santos also referred to himself as Anthony Zabrowski, a name the now New York congressman reserved for a GoFundMe venture called Friends of Pets United. That's the one where he raised money for a dog and then never used it and the dog died. Zabrowski and variations of the name are common among Ashkenazi Jews. Maury Parker told CNN he would say, oh, well, the Jews will give more if you're a Jew. And so that's the name he used for his GoFundMe. That part right there, that was that, the I'm a proud Jew thing and the Jewish thing, that's creepy and fucked up enough, right? That's just lying and gross and whatever. This is fucking racist. This is just bigoted, straight up just Jew hatred. The way to manipulate Jews into giving you money is make them think you're a Jew. Fucking hell. And by the way, this is exactly why Mike Pillow wears a cross in all of his advertisements, because he's trying to sell to Christians who go, oh, look at him proudly wearing his cross when you're not supposed to, which nobody gives a rat fuck. It's branding. This, though, that is fucked up. Right? The Dems dropped the ball on this guy. Here's the problem. And this is to some degree on us, but then it's also a point of pride with me, is that Democrats have a tendency that if they view you as part of a marginalized community or a minority with lived experience that is unheard, they will give you the space to have that, even if you're fucking making it up. There were people on the Democratic side of the aisle that came to the defense of Rachel Dolezal, for fuck's sake. The woman who pretended to be black to run and became the head of the NAACP chapter in fucking Seattle. She's not black. She isn't. She's not at all. That's not a thing. You can't trans-race yourself just because you feel like it. It's fucked up. It's weird. No. Stop it. You can enjoy the culture. So you dress like people from another culture if you fall in love with that shit. I know plenty of kung fu nerds that walk around. I'm one of them in like Chinese kung fu jackets and shit like that because it looks cool and you like it and it's inspiring and you think it's great and it resonates with you. Cool, but that does not make you Chinese or black or Korean or even white, for fuck's sake. Like, stop it. You're not, like, if you want to learn to play the fucking bagpipes, or it doesn't make you Scottish. I'm just saying, it's so fucking stupid. And that's one thing. Like, and this kind of goes to like, what you would say is like transposers, or what they call trans-trenders instead of transgender. The transgenders, people who, dress, provocatively as women or provocatively as men. They're not drag. They're playing on the, the positivity that is given out to trans people right now as we try to make a transition from vilifying to accepting as a society. There's some people who jump on that, go, hey, I can gain a little, it's almost like stolen valor to some degree to pretend to be, that group when you're absolutely not. And there's an element of it in like Harry Styles and other people wearing dresses on stuff like, I'm cool with it, which is not the same thing as being trans. And it's almost like you're borrowing from the imagery that trans people have in a way that they're having a hard time dealing with. And you can get away with it because at any time you can just go back to being you. In the same way that Rachel Dolezal, if she ever ran aground of the difficulties of being black in Seattle at some point, could just go back to being a white lady. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's different when you have an out. Now, do I give a shit if a straight male artist decides to wear a dress as a thumb in the nose or whatever? Fine. But it doesn't make you brave. It's not bravery because you have an out. That isn't your life. You are borrowing that imagery from people who are transitioning at this current time in history. I honestly, I think it's a little fucked up. Whenever when I see stuff about, Harry Styles wearing dresses and that kind of stuff, or those kind of people, I'm like, it just feels like you're stealing it. How like there's stolen valor when someone wears military garb or pretends to have been in the military or pretends to have seen battle to get the honor that comes with that. I would call this stolen sympathy. That you are using the renewed empathy of society or the renewed sympathies of society for people who are finally coming out or being able to explore who they are in reality when you're just playing like it's a fucking sandbox. It's the same problem I have with some people who, and this is not about non-binary people, but some people who identify as non-binary, when in reality, it's just cosplay for them, and they're giving the finger to a part of society, which is, again, at any point, without any, issues with their own gender identity or whatever, could just go right back to it. Yeah, it's victimization appropriation. That's a great way of putting it, Flangdoodle. And I think it's fucked up. What about David Bowie? David Bowie wasn't wearing dresses, per se. And even then, he was doing it as a punkish act when he would wear, like, feminized, shiny clothing. It's different. How about a good old imposter? That's different. That's like the, Jessica / Jonathan Yaniv in Canada. People like that who take advantage of the freedoms that we're trying to give to people who are trans in terms of like, bathroom status and take advantage of that. Because again, there's a difference between being trans and someone who is an autogynephiliac. The BTK killer would dress up in women's clothing, wear a mask, and imagine himself to be his own dead victims. That's not trans. That's autogynephilia. He got a fetished sexual arousal from momentarily pretending to be that. Eddie Izzard views himself as a cross-dresser, did for years. He was a transvestite and identified it as such. So he was very forward in who he is. He believes himself to be transgender, but only because the word has moved mostly in his lifetime, I think. So it's hard to say. It's up to him. But insofar as I think he's toyed around with other pronouns at a couple of times, but he's basically gone back to it. But I think we can all understand the difference, right? And so in making room for trans people, for example, it's very important that we do. But we don't let non-trans, not trans at all, people who are autogynephiliacs, people who get a fetished excitement out of being perceived as or perceiving themselves as the other sex, because that's rooted in a lot of deeper, often violent perversions. Those folks don't get the rights that we're trying to give to trans people, because it's not the same fucking thing any more than Rachel Dolezal deserves a scholarship that's supposed to be set up for black people. Does that make sense? There is a difference. And I think that's partly where the argument is. Partly where all this shit is in the, I think on the Democratic side of things, there's a rush to protect people who are trans and protect LGBT people, which I think is very good. But with it comes the expense of allowing anyone who simply says they are to qualify, when many of them either mean ill or are not trans at all. And that distinction is not wrong. It's just, it's a fine point. And trans people will tell you this, that, again, there's a difference between Rachel Dolezal and a black person, same way there's a difference between BTK, cross-dressing for sexual purposes, and a trans person who's really dealing with a gender transition. It's different. And acting like there isn't, and acting like, well, no one who says they are would ever be lying, does a disservice to trans people. In the same way that allowing somebody like Rachel Dolezal to get away with, getting a scholarship or some like small business loan meant for minorities would be wrong. Get it? Does that make sense? Are we clear? Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, this whole thing though, and this is, I think, in some ways that there's a huge difference. There's a leap in this languaging. It is one thing to say you're Jewish and lie about being Jewish, just for the sake of, maybe you wish you were, or maybe you want to make friends and you're just stupid. Beyond the fact that the root of his reason for saying that, what was the reason that he said he was Jewish, or that he had family that were in the Holocaust and shit like that? This is the reason. Oh, well, the Jews will give you more money if you're a Jew. That, if that statement is at all true, that is an order of magnitude worse than the stupid Jewish quit part. And it shows the intent behind pretending to be Jewish was not just socially awkward, trying to ingratiate yourself into a community you find yourself surrounded with. Like, yeah, what are you guys talking about? Sports? I love sport ball. What's the game that, they get it in the net? Hey, right, through the goalposts. That's what I was saying. Like, were you just trying to suck up because you can't make friends and you don't know anything about what people are talking about? And going, watch this, I can bullshit these assholes into handing me their wallets. That's a whole different game, especially when it's based on race or religion. Fuck that dude. All right, here we go. Back to where we were, because no doubt the mess will come to the defense of George Santos.
Means to keep raising the deficit and the debt, which has now reached gargantuan astronomical levels.
It's not astronomical at all, unless you consider the American economy to be reaching astronomical levels, because it's 115%, 120% of GDP. So 100% of that must certainly be astronomical. Huh? No, right. America's a third world country, shithole, right?
So introducing an element of fiscal prudence. Now,
Prudence.
will all of this pan out? Will all of this
No.
result in good things? I don't know. We have
No. Will it result in good things? No. Not at all.
to be cautious, and we also
Yes, be guarded. Don't get your heart broken again. Once bitten, twice shy.
have to be vigilant in keeping
Yes.
our House members on their toes, so to speak.
Yes, keeping people on their toes, in stress positions. What you want is your already edgy, fucked up, psychotic, paranoid Congress members to be behaving like they're in Abu Ghraib while they're on their toes. Why don't you make them stand on an upside down paint bucket with electrodes on their nipples, you fucking asshole? I have as many of you may know, I have a chip on my shoulder about keeping people on their toes or holding their feet to the fire. Those two analogies, and people who use them, can go fuck themselves. I don't believe in torture analogies to get people interested. If they're not interested, don't elect them if you have to sell them on your ideas so much so that they only will keep their promises if you torture them. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, X5 no more. Thank you so much. Water Goddess, thank you so much for the super chat. And Robert, thank you as well. Larry, thanks to Hal Stream and the chat for sincere and stimulating topics. And thanks to Ficus, my favorite character, for his razor sharp punditry. He doesn't know which side of the fence he's on right now. He's very confused right now. It's a rough time for Ficus.
Because, and I think the House Freedom Caucus is going to try to make sure that these concessions, these agreements, these deals made by McCarthy are in fact kept and are enforced.
You think that they're going to try to keep him to that? How successful do you think they're going to be, considering they are no longer needed? And, oh, by the way, can I remind everyone that while it only takes one person to call for the speaker's vote again, there is only one option where he doesn't have the majority of them, where they don't get right back to the present vote, is if you whip 5 or 10 other people anyways. So running it down from 5 to 1 had zero fucking meaning. If you can't bring people on board, then that 5 or 10 group of people, then it'll be a failed vote any fucking way, and just waste your time. And the Democrats can sit there and go, fuck, man, we go through 4 more days of this horse shit without holding their feet to the fire. Never mind, I believe you stood up and blasted for a gun last time. Yes, I did.
Forced, because if they're not, let's remember, it only takes one member of the House to put McCarthy's own speakership up for a vote.
Right. But it takes at least 10 people to go with you, which is higher than the 5 number, which is why he didn't give a fuck. And it just puts you back in the same position. So that person, that one person, be it Lauren Boebert, be it Matt Gaetz, be it Perry, be it Chip Roy, be it any of these motherfuckers, they come out and they go, let's call for a vote right now. Hell, if a Democrat does it, all it does is makes the Freedom Caucus vote present again. Like if a Democrat just called for it, I call for a roll call vote on the speaker, and they could do a whip count and go, hey, how many people are here? How many how many people? They got 12 people out right now. Do we have anybody out? Everybody's here. Madam Speaker, I would like to call for Madam President, I would like to call for a roll call vote for Speaker, because they wouldn't have the votes to keep him in. It's just dumb. But on the Republican side, they would need at least 10 to back them up. That's why he went from 5 to 1 and it didn't fucking matter. Just like, and for what? How does that result in making him keep his promises? If you don't put a bill up that will never get the fuck out of the House, so that I can flex back home about what a failure I am to get actually any legislation through, I will call for a vote where the votes will basically ring out exactly the same way they did last time. And in best case scenario, and worst case scenario, we'll have 4 more fucking days of bullshit like we had last time, with no one waiting in the wings to take over the spot if we don't. Have at it, fuckos. I give a shit. And by the way, this is him going through the list. Was there anything in there that worried any of you other than the debt ceiling stuff, which I call bullshit on? It will absolutely get passed. And the Democrats can afford, because, by the way, the Democrats largely have the states that have the most money, can afford to ride it out longer with local support for people than red states can. The first squeeze comes to red states when you shut down the government or you do this kind of brinksmanship with the debt ceiling. Anything else? Like, honestly, what, the vote to repeal the 50,000, any of this shit? Any of it. It's a fucking joke. Even a fucking church commission to look into the deep state? I mean, I'm happy about it because it's going to give me a shit ton of programming, and you and I are going to have a laugh going after this shit. It's going to be hilarious. But am I worried about, like, what are they going to do? Draw up some charges and refer them to Merrick Garland's DOJ and expect him to what? Act swiftly? Right? Do you see? For what, like a year and a half? Meanwhile, they're going to lose Santos. They're going to lose 4 others at least. There's going to be a chance that there'll be a vote in the fucking spring for the House, not because somebody's called for a vote simply because they don't like it, Kevin's not keeping his promises, but because Democrats will go, hey, wait a minute. Fuck, we have the votes to actually, we're in control. What time is it? That's going to happen. And it only takes one of them to stand up and have the vote. And it's a whole new Congress by like June. Now, some of it might take longer depending on whether they drag their feet on special elections and whatnot, or if guys hold out, or the Republicans are not going to they're not going to kick anybody off short of them going to straight to fucking jail. Like they're not going to drop you or make you resign unless you're fucking sentenced, including Santos. Like I fully expect, because McCarthy needs every fucking vote he has, that he's going to hang on to Santos with both hands. They can. Well, Jacko says they can pass. Biden will veto. It won't even pass the Senate. He won't even have to veto it. Good Lord. So I'm just, everything's DOA in the Senate in that regard. And if they don't want to wreck the economy just to, flex for their folks back home, they're going to have to come up with actual solutions that they can stomach. And there are none. Because they're not going to raise taxes, and they're not going to cut the bigger programs, because none of them can fucking afford it. So get ready for a bunch of showboat committees and votes on bills that won't go fucking anywhere. And to all the force the vote folks that like, we have to force a vote on Medicare for all to get people on board to show where they really are. No. One of the reasons Democrats don't want to pull that up is because if it fails, because they don't have the votes across the board, it's harder to bring it up next time. And I got news for you. Just because somebody's Democratic and in a Democratic district doesn't mean the majority of their constituents want it in that way. They might want a public option, but that won't be enough for a bunch of people. So they'll just, even if you vote for a public option and that fails because it's just still not enough. Because again, that's, there's an argument about the public option in reconciliation, but you've got to have the House. And you need a lot of votes. Because, and again, filibuster being what it is, that's what holds it back.